A few days ago, I finished another big edit of a key chapter in my book, When Jacob Returns. In this update, I took yet another hard look at the army of the Antichrist, titled The Two Armies of the Antichrist. It took weeks for me to do that, and the result was more material, more insight, and more dread. Not for me, for you. You need to understand why that chapter is so horrifying. Gog is not the Antichrist. And when his army descends upon the Middle East and Israel, the world will be blasted apart and billions will die before the Antichrist even begins to arise. I wrote a book about that. It's called Ezekiel's Fire, and the full text is available for free on its own website, ezekielsfire.com. Unfortunately, that book means that you and I are in so much trouble that I hardly know where to start. If you thought that China Joe and the deep state were number one, keep reading, because they aren't. If you thought that censorship, the China virus, and government overreach were our biggest problems, you'd have a point, but only one. If you thought that global debt, a collapsing economy, and big China were our biggest problems, you'd be real close, but not close enough. Not even the coming of the Antichrist is our biggest problem right now. He will be, but not yet. Our biggest threat right now for our immediate future is this: Gog and Magog are coming soon, and no one understands what's about to happen. As I said above, I just finished another detailed analysis of the army that is led by the Antichrist. That analysis is again in my chapter, The Two Armies of the Antichrist, on whenjacobreturns.com. I need to do at least one more major edit, which will include a chapter conclusion, but you don't need to wait for that. You can still go through that chapter and understand something very, very important. Gog, of Gog and Magog, is not the Antichrist. You cannot look at the description of the military activities of the Antichrist and truthfully claim that the Antichrist is Gog. There's literally no way you can compare the two and see that they are even similar. They just don't fit. The problem is that your pastor probably believes that Gog is the Antichrist. Everyone in seminary is taught that. If you took a class in eschatology, your teacher probably said that the Antichrist was Gog. If he didn't say so out loud, he still taught you an end times timeline that assumed that Gog was the Antichrist. Even post-tribbers believe that Gog is the Antichrist. So this isn't a pre-trib versus post-trib debate. This is about Christians being led so far astray that they have no idea about what is going to hit them next. Furthermore, when you look carefully at the conditions under which the Antichrist operates, it will become very, very clear that civilization, as we know it, has been destroyed and billions will have died. That's right, billions will have died before the Antichrist rises to power. I am so amazed by the ignorance of Christian leadership that I can hardly believe it. If your pastor went to seminary, he has been programmed to believe a fairy tale. He also probably doesn't know his Aleph from his Gimel, but you can bet that he knows all the best commentaries on the Bible. Oh yeah. I won't get into all of the reasons why Gog cannot be the Antichrist. That would take a book, such as the one that I wrote, the one called When Jacob Returns. But I can show you 3 things that should capture your attention. The Antichrist doesn't have an air force. The army of the Antichrist is stopped dead when a foreign navy blocks his sea-based supply line. The Antichrist marches back and forth through Israel unopposed several times. Think through the implications of all that. Just those 3 alone should turn everything that you know about the Antichrist upside down. For instance, that Air Force. There is no way that any modern army would ever invade a foreign territory without air support. Every conflict over the past 60 years has driven this point home. Without air support, Your army is toast. Of course, it would not be toast if there weren't any airplanes still flying. That's right. The fact that the Antichrist does not have an air force tells us that no one has an air force. Again, let me make this clear. The fact that the Antichrist does not have an air force means that no one has an air force. Does that begin to help you understand how bad the situation is all around the world? The fact that there is no air force means that we are unable to create aircraft or parts for aircraft for military purposes. It means that our manufacturing capacity has been shattered. I doubt that very many of us want to live in a world with a destroyed manufacturing base, but that world is coming. Then there's the issue of the Antichrist being unable to resupply his army. The ships of Chittim block the ability of the Antichrist to invade the king of the south. And there's only one reason why this foreign navy could do that. Because the army of the Antichrist is being resupplied by sea, the Mediterranean Sea. Why is this important? It means that he is unable, or at least insufficiently able, to supply his army via land routes. It means that he can't get the supplies fast enough over land to continue his invasion of the king of the south. And by the way, did you know that the Hebrew doesn't actually say king of the south? No, it actually says king of the Negev. Then there's a problem that demonstrates something that is personally horrifying. Israel is destroyed. The army of the Antichrist is being described as marching back and forth through Israel, and this means that Israel's military has been so completely destroyed that very little of it remains. The fact that the Antichrist marches unopposed through the Jezreel Valley and then down through the coastal plain, well, it means that the Israeli cities along the Mediterranean have been destroyed, and that there's no military that can block the Antichrist. I lived in Israel for 15 years. I worked in Tel Aviv and Kfar Saba. I've walked the beaches of the Mediterranean Sea countless times. All of that will have been destroyed before the Antichrist rises to power. And the thought of that makes me sick. And it's confirmation of this verse. Quote, "And it shall come to pass in all the land, says the Lord, that 2/3 in it shall be cut off and die, but 1/3 shall be left in it." Zechariah 13:8, the NKJV. And before you claim that the Antichrist is unopposed because he has already taken control of the Israeli government, think again. That is not how the Bible describes it. The Antichrist does not grab control of Jerusalem until after his second invasion of the south. Not just after one, after 2 invasions. The Antichrist only takes over Jerusalem by subversion after his second invasion of Israel. And when I say second invasion, he gets all the way down into the coastal plain, into the Tel Aviv-Yaffo area, when he's turned back. He is literally unopposed by Israel twice. And both invasions strike deep into Israeli territory. And when he invades Israel a third time, destroying Egypt and the king of the south, he is still unopposed by the Israeli army. This is very, very, very bad. But I know what some of you are thinking. You probably live far away from Israel in the Middle East and don't believe that you have much to fear from all this. And a part of me hopes that you are right, but that's just my own irrational optimism talking. You will be toast when this happens. And you will be toast because of Ezekiel's fire. The Bible is very clear that there will be a solar event that will knock everything down. I described that in my book, Ezekiel's Fire, which will also be updated and rewritten after I'm done with When Jacob Returns. The irony is that there are non-Christians who are preparing for Ezekiel's fire, while many who claim to be followers of Christ sit around and do nothing. Here's an example of someone who knows that this solar event is incoming. It's Suspicious Observers on the YouTube channel, Suspicious Observers with the O in observers being a 0. Ben Davidson of Suspicious Observers is not a Christian, yet he knows something that Christians should have known for centuries, that a micronova or solar flare will smash our civilization flat. It's in the Bible, but too many foolish Christians are ignoring it because they've been listening to false teachers. It's time for foolish Christians to wake up and realize that they've been lied to for a very long time. Some of those lies are understandable, but not this one. The search term Gog is the Antichrist on Google.com. Run that. That's a lie from the pits of hell, but that doesn't stop people from repeating it, and it has 98,000 search results. But notice what happens when we do a search for the opposite of that statement. Gog is not the Antichrist. You only get 31 search results with that one, and 2 of those are mine, and I guess with this video, hopefully the 3rd. Most of the rest of those 31 or 32 search results are people who disagree with that statement that Gog is not the Antichrist. And no, there isn't a third option. Gog either is or is not the Antichrist, and there is overwhelming proof that he is not. All that you need to see it for yourself is an ounce of Hebrew and a pound of willingness to look at all of this for yourself. This isn't rocket science. It's not that hard. But you need to throw off the blinders that are keeping you from seeing the obvious. Unfortunately, you do not have much time to do all of that. Gog and Magog is already getting ready to happen. It could happen in a few months. It might take a few years, but not more than a few years. And the reason why it is so close is precisely due to the collapse in energy resources that started years ago. Energy availability has been in decline for years, but you probably didn't see it because our energy reserves have been financialized to an extreme level. And we've hit our limit on that. There's only so much that you can financialize for only so long. Eventually, your debts come due, and you go to war. Do you need a factoid to understand my point? Then think of this terrifying statement. Quote, "We will never go back to the height of 2018 oil production." Close quote. That is from Art Berman, the #1 oil expert in the world. He is the only petroleum geophysicist willing to speak out about this, and that's because he's independent. And you can hear him make that statement on this video that I've profiled before. It's titled Art Berman, Oil Expert on Price, Cost, Value, History, and Future of Oil, RCS Episode 51. It's on YouTube. Here's why this statement is terrifying, assuming that you love your children. This means war to the death for our civilization and then the coming of Gog and Magog. The wars that will bring our civilization to its knees started years ago, but they are about to increase in intensity. The only question is over how long it will take before the coming of Gog and Magog happens, and then Ezekiel's fire. But the answer to that question starts with clearly understanding these 2 points. Gog is not the Antichrist, and Gog comes before the Antichrist. Kids, please get this right. I don't want to watch you die.